Get Just want to mess around this evening with a couple different ideas on operating the board. Want to have somebody jump on here with me in a minute. We'll see what happens. I switch over and open this in a different browser just for fun. See what it does when I do that. Cool. Looks like that works pretty smooth. Puke. Very interesting. Huh. Strange. It's like it left me in the same browser. Nothing planned for this evening. Unless anybody had something they want to bring up, feel free to do so. I'm just testing out a couple different things here. Okay. I'll try something new. Let's have a refresh. Ooh, quite what I wanted to do there. All right, peeps. Yep, just playing around, checking out a couple different options that there are on the Talkshoe link. See what things can be added and moved around, that sort of thing. Nothing special. And part of what I've been messing around with, everybody, really kind of goes back to the original idea for starting up these episodes. here on Talkshoe or any platform, actually, just so we could have some interaction in the group. People get to know each other and bring up issues that they're wondering about, things that are going on in their life, uh, different matters maybe that they're dealing with. And it's been going for what? Just over 5 years now. Every Sunday night. And we're doing a change up a little bit. I announced last week that I might do things throughout the week. Might still hop in on Sunday nights, sometimes, maybe not. But just kind of add some variety, which everybody should do in their life. I mean, if we are in some sort of a simulacrum or simulation, or however you want to put it, then the best thing really to do, if you find yourself there, which it appears we very well may have, is to change things around, screw up the algorithm for it a little bit. That way you aren't quite so predictable. And human beings, one thing about humans is we are creatures of habit. And so the best way to figure someone out is to follow their habits. And so if you start changing up habits a little bit, then it's going to be a little more difficult to kind of pinpoint what's going on, what your plans are, what direction you're moving in, that type of thing. So that's why we're doing that. And so this is pretty much going to be it for this evening. I've got a couple things I've been studying this evening and looking into. I actually got on here a little bit late. That's the reason why. Because I kind of put it out of my mind for the first time in 5 years of not having to be here right away. And glanced at the clock and was like, oh gosh, well, if I'm going to jump on, I should do it now. So here we are. And there's a lot of pretty big things happening. A lot of people don't necessarily know about. It's mostly on my end, I guess, the reason why. But it's really going to open up some doors and open up some more directions that things can move in, as far as, I don't want to call it counseling, maybe legal help, that sort of idea. And that's another reason for changing around our pattern for these weekly broadcasts. But I hadn't done anything through this week, so I felt it was probably necessary to jump on this evening, because the one pattern I don't want to break is at least having a weekly appearance here on this platform. And you kind of wonder sometimes when people have been doing regular episodes for several years, and all of a sudden things just disappear. You wonder, oh, what's going on? Are they alive? Are they in prison? What's going on with them? They relocated, living in another country now. Did they lose their electricity? Just throw some confusion in there. And which, by the way, I want to give a heads up, RIP, rest in peace to Mr. Chandler, who was on Legal Deception for a few years. He started up the legal deception calls, and I think a lot of people kind of cut their teeth with using Talkshoe, at least I know I did, on those calls for legal deception. With him, Trial Hera, and a few others. But he passed away this past week on Monday, 6:30 in the morning. So I said, if this is some sort of simulation or something like that, then all he's merely done is leveled up, moved on to the next level of what's happening, and probably kind of looking back at things with a little bit of amusement and looking back laughing, going, oh my gosh, guys, you have no idea what's happening. But we will all be in that position at some point. the best we can do is just take care of this life right now while we can. Make sure our lives are solid and those that we love around us, their lives are solid as well. And, if this really is a form of a trust, we need to treat it like one and act as a trustee would, and at least better the situation here as much as we can. And when we leave, make sure we don't leave it in a diminished capacity, but leave it as good as or better than it was when we first arrived. I think that's definitely one thing the idea of trust uh, is extremely correct on. That's the way we should be treating our life. That's the way we should be treating anything, any relationship that we're in. Absolutely should be treated that way. Well, like I tell everybody every week, this is Sunday, the first day of the week, not the seventh, not the Sabbath. And I also try to remind everybody, to study and learn who you really are, where you're really from, and where you're really at. You learn that, you're going to be much further ahead than other people are in life. And I was thinking the other day about that statement, the amount of times I've made it, who you are, where you're from, where you're really at. And there's another W word that kind of lingers in the background. And it's a W word that will get answered by those three questions. And that is the W word, why. And that's probably people's biggest question. Why are we here? And if you learn where you're from, where you're really at, that's going to answer that why question for you. And when we figure out, that's just step one. When we figure those things out, those three things will immediately lead us to the why. And then we can start taking care and tackling that why issue. Because that's really the most important question, is why. Well, everybody, I will catch you either later on sometime this week or maybe pop in next Sunday night as well. Really had nothing planned for this evening because initially really didn't even plan on being here. But I think one of the things that we need to pay attention to, and one of the things that can be very frustrating, is it seems like everybody has figured out that essentially everything really has been, like Chandler would say, a deception. At the worst, a all-out lie. Wake up one day, and a lot of us realize that we're just essentially playing a role on a game board. And people start looking for solutions. And it's very frustrating, though, when you go and you offer solutions and you show solutions to people and you turn around and look and see what occurs afterwards. It seems like they almost kick harder against those solutions and still want to hold on to that original deception that they had been experiencing in life. And you shake your head and think, oh my God, what is wrong with you? It's like a child growing up and being told there is no Santa Claus. I think children have an easier time accepting the fact that there really isn't a Santa Claus, that it's been mom and dad or grandma and grandpa all along, than people do when they wake up to this illusion that has surrounded them. And if they do grab onto anything, the first thing they grab to, they almost want to hold on to harder than they hold on to the previous illusion. And they hold on to things that are total lies and deception that will get them in even more trouble than they're currently in. They might not even be in trouble at all. They might not have any problems going on in their life, but they'll run across these other ideas regarding matters that they have absolutely no idea about the background on that info, and they don't research it or anything. They just suck it right up, accept it, jump into that state assembly or whatever you want to call it, and won't let go of it. And sadder yet, I see people put thousands of dollars into some of those platforms, expecting that it's really going to do something for them. And many times, I mean, I sit down with them, I show them exactly what's going on, what's happening, that their money has essentially just been squandered and it's not going to do anything for them. And they get that figured out, and they make a phone call to one of those people that let them into that deception. And within about 2 minutes, those people just get sucked right back in again. And oh, by the way, we're ending another $500. And they cough it up. And many times, 3, 4 years later, they come back to me. Sometimes they don't come back at all because they're embarrassed. If they do come back, they come back embarrassed and pissed off. Like, oh my God, I've put $12,000, $13,000 into this and it did absolutely nothing. It's like, yeah, isn't that what I said in the beginning? And I'm very fortunate. I have not put any money into any of these crazy rabbit holes or ideas that people try to sell, basically making a profit from the other slaves. The only money I've put into anything is purchasing education, buying the correct information, getting some books, preferably even books that they don't even have on the bookshelf anymore because they don't want people reading them. That's where I've put my money at. And it's done a whole lot more for me than these people in whatever little assembly or whatever that keep dumping tons of money into useless things. And people need to understand, use a little common sense right off the get. If somebody comes to you and they're going to do something regarding your legal person for you, maybe move you into another type of nationality or something like that, it's only, say, $600. We'll take care of all the paperwork. We'll do it all for you. And you think, oh, cool, because you don't know a lot about it. And evidently they've got it all figured out. So it's easier to just let somebody else do it. People need to stop and think about something very serious. If anyone is going to do anything legally for you, they're going to need a power of attorney. But I've not seen any of those groups, any of those other platforms ever request a power of attorney from anyone. And I'm sorry, nobody is going to make any adjustments to your legal possession in life without a power of attorney. They can't touch squat. That should be a big red flag to people right there. Because if that's as simple as it took, was just maybe somebody's, a lot of times they're not even asked for a signature on anything or an agreement or contract, nothing like that. If it's just so easy just to switch around somebody's legal standing, then guess what? This world would be mayhem. Is you'd have all these scoundrels out there and con men, grifters, whatever, going and switching around people's nationalities and this and that. If it was that simple. I mean, the United States of America is probably about the least expensive company there is when it comes to dealing with a citizenship. You look at a lot of other countries and it might cost you $10, $20, $50,000 or more. But though these people think that some anonymous person that they met on TikTok or whatever is able to do it for them, no signature, no power of attorney, they just need your money. People really need to grow some brain cells, expand their gray matter just a little bit, deep in the pit of their heart. I'm sure that they feel, they got that gut instinct that something just isn't quite right. Well, guess what? When you get that gut instinct, odds are that's your subconscious that is already aware of all these things I just brought up. putting that gut feeling in you that something isn't quite right. People should follow that once in a while. Yeah, I know when I started out and I had people throwing all the UCC paperwork at me. I got to do the UCC one, then you got to do the UCC three addendum, and um, you got to have the indemnity clause, all this stuff. Hold harmless agreement. Something just didn't quite feel right, so I didn't touch it. And I'm very glad I didn't. I mean, shoot, hold harmless agreement. Who are you making that with? You're making a hold harmless agreement with yourself? I mean, come on, think about it. Anyway, guys, catch you in a few days. If anybody happen to stop in, thanks for being here. I just want to make a quick little appearance this evening, let you all know that the situation here at Tactical Sovereignty is not drifting away or disappearing or vanishing, nothing like that. It's still staying here. In fact, it's growing stronger, believe it or not.
Brian,
I
can I
think
ask you a
this,
question?
yeah, I think this next year is going to be very interesting. What's going on, Ken?
Yeah, I would ask you, you were telling us last week how we might follow what you're doing if you come out with other calls rather than just on Sunday night. And I tried doing what you said. I work off of a telephone, not off of a laptop or desktop. I tried doing what you said with Talkshoe, and I couldn't get anywhere with the texting process. So could you repeat that or tell us how we do that if we simply want to get a text?
Well, I mean, since it's the platform that I use or whatever, and it's my episodes or whatever, it doesn't necessarily send me an alert saying that, hey, you've got a call coming up in 15 minutes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
Right.
that's really just for people who follow other people's episodes or whatever. But they've got the follow on there, so I'm not sure what all is entailed. I do know that um, there was one that I followed a year or so ago, and prior to them coming on, I would get like an email from them that let me know what's coming up. Um,
Mm-hmm. Okay, well,
so
I
I
tried
mean,
doing what you said, to do it through a text process, and I just couldn't, following what you said, I gave up after half an hour. I wasn't getting anywhere. So,
yeah, I know the technology stuff can be kind of strange, and especially with a phone, because you're looking at like the mobile platform that they have. Now, I would say this, because there's some things you cannot do from just a phone. All right, I ran into that with somebody doing cryptocurrency things, and we were all about
mm-hmm.
ready to give up. And I said, whoa, 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 hold on a minute. Now, I know, like on the Android platform, you're going to have those. Some people call it the hamburger or the three little dots in the upper right hand corner. And I told him, I
Mm-hmm.
said, hold on, let's try something. So I hit those three dots, and that gives you a whole list of options of things you can do. One of them is to switch to the desktop format. And
Mm-hmm.
I did that, and when it gave us a desktop format, of course, you kind of have to scroll around with your finger to move around on that page to see where everything is. But then we were able to do the stuff that needed to be done that couldn't be done supposedly just from a phone. The problem is, it's not that it couldn't be done from a phone. It couldn't be done from a mobile platform, but it can be done from like the desktop platform. That might be something to experiment with and take a look at.
Do you know where that is on iPhone? Because I don't see three little dots. I know it's on Android. But...
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, on those phones, no. I don't know where it's located at, but there'll be something that gives you an option.
I kind of figured you might know this because I thought at one time you told us that you ran your operation off of a phone, that you didn't use a desktop, if I understood you correctly.
Right, and I do. I just use a phone,
Mm-hmm.
but I use an
Mm-hmm.
Android. I use an Android. I
Oh,
don't
use
use an
the Android.
iPhone. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Okay.
why I gave the
All right. So in other
example
words,
for
I just
Android.
have to. Right. So I just have to mess around with it and see if I can find some way to do that. Then I guess.
Yeah. I've learned that sometimes at first it's hard to do, but You have to just kind of take a deep breath and sit down and just look around and experiment and see what's what and this and that. You know what I mean? And not necessarily be in a rush. And it's not as bad as when phones first came out. I think everybody was afraid. Oh my God, I hit the wrong button. I'm going to blow everything up. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
it's not that bad now. I mean, now it's like if you hit something that's going to make a big change, it'll ask you, are you sure? So.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Are you going to, since this is still, I presume from what you said, off of the Talkshoe platform, are you going to record these other calls and we'll be able to go and look at them, or they're not going to be a regular Sunday episode, so they're not going to be recorded?
No, they'll be
You didn't
recorded.
really go into that last week.
Yeah, no, they'll be
They will.
recorded. Yeah, they'll be recorded and uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Okay, will I also be able to find them if I go to Talkshoe, where they have the episodes by number, and you can go back and listen to any episode for 4 years or something?
Oh yeah. That's still definitely going to be available. And because
Okay.
and that's what I like about TalkShoe is that it gives you basically the whole library of all the calls.
Mhm. And then I'd like to ask you one other question, and I know you said something before about the things that people call the TDA accounts or the minor accounts and so forth. There are some individuals out there, and they don't appear to be ignorant or stupid, that really believe in order to completely free yourself, you must claim that minor account as part of the policies, or whatever, however you're going to do this to make it known who you are, whatever method you're going to use, that should be part of the program. Have you looked at that and determined that you don't believe that information is correct, or what's your thought on that, if you don't mind me asking?
No, it's fine. Yeah. When it comes to the minor accounts, I mean, I don't mean to brag or anything, but I heard nobody talking about those here 5, 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And I only found one individual that was really looking deep into this stuff. And of course, there's a lot of people talking about, treasury direct accounts and this and that stuff, but nobody's talking about the minor accounts. This gentleman did, and I looked it up, and you can find it in the Code of Federal Regulations. And all my research through that, basically, what it looked, not really what it looked like, what it really is, it's like any other account. All right. Think of even just like a bank account or whatever. Number one, if, you know, there's a lot of Bill Smiths in the world, but they all can't access each other's bank accounts, right?
Hmm.
Um,
Correct.
and just like any other account, if you have a personal account for you specifically, there's not going to be anything in it unless you deposited anything in it yourself, or
Hmm.
unless, like when you're thinking like the word minor, well, if somebody is a minor, then that means that there's going to be some adults in the room, or there's going to be a guardian or grandpa or grandma that has set up an account for them and put money into it, put deposits, whether it's different certificates, um, whether like maybe municipal bonds, things like that, that they'll put in there to mature, and that will be a fund for them when they get older. Well, that's what those minor accounts are. That's what those are for. Um, Dirty old Uncle Sam hasn't gone and set up a little private financial account for you. Now, because I've talked to plenty of people who have gone and they've set up, and I did it myself. I went through the whole TDA thing because Treasury will give you an assistant that'll help you set all that stuff up, and you can do it. You can go and set up those accounts, but if you don't put anything into it, they're empty, and they're not gonna sit there very long being empty. And I've talked to a lot of other people
Hmm.
who have gone and they've set them up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I did that. I've got it all done. I had that set up for several years." And I'm like, "Okay." I said, "What have you paid for with it?" "Well, I haven't been able to do anything with it." And it's like, exactly. You haven't been able to do anything with it because there's nothing in it.
Mm-hmm.
So, taking control of those minor accounts, number one, taking control of them. You can't take control of it if it doesn't exist and nobody has set one up for you. Then there's nothing to take control of. And that has
Mm-hmm.
nothing to do with you changing status or anything like that.
No, I think that's a completely separate issue because, in fact, somebody told me that they were setting this up for U.S. citizens, which I found a little odd because I was thinking if there is an account there, I mean, how could a U.S. citizen rightfully make a claim on that account? That just didn't make sense to me. But
Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of it's very counterintuitive. You know what I mean? Somebody's saying, "Oh,
mm-hmm.
we're moving you in one direction," but it's like, wait a minute, you're still holding me back over in this other part. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that's one
And is
thing.
this pretty much? Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, well, is that pretty much what the guy that you said you only know one guy that really looked into this? Is that pretty much what he concluded also?
Oh yeah, it's not one. It's been a few people because
Mm-hmm.
I've been involved over the past few years. I've been involved with groups that maybe 30, 40, 50 people going and doing it. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's always been the result. I
Okay.
just thought of
All right.
one guy from this last week that was saying that, and I was like, okay, what have you paid for with it? What have you done? And they're like, well, I haven't been able to do anything, So, but that was just a recent one. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's nothing magical. It's no different than any other kind of account. There's nothing you can do with it unless you've deposited something of value in it or somebody else has done it for you as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I appreciate your input. Thank you.
And in the same light, that's just like what I was mentioning a little bit ago, is that people say they're going to do this and do that for you, but though they never ask for a power of attorney. Well, there's nothing you can do in the legal realm without a power of attorney. Whenever anybody goes and when you hire a lawyer for something, you get sometimes it's one, sometimes it's maybe two or three pieces of paper that you have to sign. And what you're doing is you're signing over power of attorney to them. You're basically like handing them the microphone. They can speak for you.
Well, it's my conclusion that it'd be kind of crazy. I mean, I could see somebody, whatever they're promoting, and if you want to go along with it, saying that, I'll draw up some documents for you. But I mean, why would anybody in their right mind let somebody else file documents with or without your signature on your behalf? I mean, you would want to know what's going on, I would think.
Yeah, that's correct. And I've spoke to people actually who've lost a lot of money out of their bank accounts and stuff because of doing that. Um, Going and
Mm-hmm.
letting other people draw up documents, and what they were doing is they were actually authorizing this other individual to uh, have a fiduciary position in their life without realizing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things I don't like about, people are always asking about getting templates. Well, I'm sorry, there really is no template for almost anything. Yeah, I think the only template people see really in life, and just about everybody will participate with, is the template people have to fill out to get, for instance, like a driver's license, because that
Mm-hmm.
is a unilateral contract. It's one-sided. You know what I mean? So it's the same thing for everybody. But if you want a template, say, for instance, for even saying something simple like a divorce, there is no such template because the spouses' names are all going to be different. Their ages are all going to be different. Their addresses are all going to be different. Um, their finances and things that they own, or their property, all those things are going to be different. So there can't be a basic template for even something as basic as, say, for instance, like divorce. Um, I would say, gosh, trying to think of something basic. Maybe even say a template for getting rid of the voters registration, well, which is essentially just making sure you were not on the voting rolls. That might be the most basic
Mm-hmm.
template that you get, but really all you need because names are going to be different. All you're going to really need is you put your name, I, John Doe, whatever, and in 2 or 3 sentences, for whatever reason, say, due to the fraud that I see in the election system, or, you know, I do not advocate anybody to speak for me on a state or international level. That's all you got to say, and
Mhm.
have it notarized and send that in. But that's probably about as basic as a template that you could get for something simple. But then again, you say nobody needs a template. That's something you should be able to write down yourself. And I don't, people really don't realize they don't want templates because that takes knowledge out of their hands. Because whatever their name's on, they need to be able to speak to and stand up regarding. Otherwise, it's useless.
Mhm. Well, this is kind of the equivalent. I've had people ask me, could you give me a flow chart, Kent, that I can go into court with? I mean, after you have the first interchange back and forth, the first couple of sentences, what good is the flow chart? But this is the way people are, so.
Right. Well, and say, yeah, flowchart for court is actually a good example too, because in different parts of the country, things are going to be different. As far as, say, for instance, somebody has filed a petition for you to answer. Okay. Well, sometimes people are going to want to go and put in a motion to dismiss. Well, in some areas, yeah, you can put that in. But in other areas, you can't do that. You have to put in your answer first. And if
Mhm.
they're sending you what's called, say for instance, like a qualified question, then it has to be answered with not just a regular answer, but it has to be a qualified answer. And in some areas, it may not even be called necessarily an answer. You might be giving a response. So
Mhm.
the flow of what you can file and when you can file regarding court cases isn't going to be the same everywhere you go.
Well, I was talking more about, you make a good point, obviously, but I was talking more about when people ask you for a flow chart about how they're going to conduct themselves in the courtroom, what they're going to go in and say. Well, again, after you have one interchange with the purported judge or with whomever, uh, the flow chart would go all around the room. How could you work off a flow chart? You either know what you're doing or you don't know what you're doing. But this
Yeah,
comes from people who really, for one reason or another, you don't really want to get into the weeds, so to speak, and they just want to make this easy like an ABC operation. This is not an ABC operation.
yep, exactly. Yeah, you don't know who all the players are and what all the circumstances are. You don't know all the moving parts. So yeah, flowchart it's just it's a crazy idea for people that know how these operations conduct themselves. But for people that have absolutely no clue whatsoever, it sounds like it may be a reasonable question, but no, it's not reasonable at all.
There's nothing, there's nothing that replaces really having this in your heart and really believing in what you're doing, because people, even when they're your adversary, I've had people say to me, Kent, I know, or calling me by name, whatever surname, they will say, Kent, I know that you're very sincere about what you do. I can hear it in your voice. So this sincerity does not come through with many people who are just looking to escape what they consider to be an oppressive system, but they don't want to spend the time necessary to understand the history of it and to understand why they're really doing it. And that comes across loud and clear to the other side. So it's not just a compendium of how much knowledge you have, it's also what you believe and how you're able to present that, articulate it, and come across to others. That's my experience. So, and I've seen that over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely true. And because people will be tested, you know what I mean? And they can tell if
Mhm.
you sincerely know what you're talking about, if you sincerely believe in what you're talking about. You can tell. It's just like a parent can tell when their child is lying to them. Did you take that cookie? Did you take that chocolate chip cookie? no, mom, even though they have chocolate all over their face. And you can tell just by the way they respond.
Yep.
And these people, whether it's court or whatever, they are, or say even a police officer alongside the road, they're dealing with people. This is what they do. And so they can tell who they're talking to, whether this individual is calm, collected, and knows exactly what they're discussing, or if they're just being reactionary and trying to,
Mm-hmm.
throw up a wall of defense. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
and they'll even throw little curveball things at people that would be maybe an unusual question to see how you handle that curveball. Do you go with the flow? You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, what does the scripture say? Scripture says that you should be able to give any man an answer for your belief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Yep.
you don't know when that man is going to come and present himself. Say you may have court at 9:30 a.m. Monday morning. Well, you've been preparing all weekend, this and that. Well, like scripture says, you need to be able to answer any man. Well, any man can appear at any time. I had a situation where I was looking, glanced up, a monitor came on that I had on my back porch, and I could see that there was somebody walking towards my front door from one corner of the property, and at the same time, there was another guy walking towards the front door from the other corner of the property. And both of those
Mm-hmm.
vehicles were unmarked, but I could tell they were wearing a lanyard around their neck, right? And so these
Mm-hmm.
were obviously law enforcement of some type. And I met them out in front of the house before they even made it to the front door, which that surprised them, you know. And
Mm-hmm.
just instantly, you have to be able to answer any man at the drop of a hat. And I took care of that in a matter of about 30 or 40 seconds and said, "Thank you guys." And I turned around and walked back in the house. And I looked out
Mm-hmm.
the window and they're standing there staring at each other like, oh my God. I mean, he basically just laid it all out and then he just turned around and walked away from us. But that's the
Mm-hmm.
way we have to be.
Yep. Well, it's hard. It's a hard thing to, there's a lot of people who say they want to be free, but it's really a hard thing to teach people because most people will not pay the attendant costs in order to be free and will not go through what you have to go through to be free. So,
All right.
and
And people
that's what
don't,
I've observed.
absolutely, people don't
But
realize how much effort they've put into putting those chains on.
yep.
So becoming free isn't just a matter of walking away because you're going to have to redo some of that effort that you put in to putting those chains on to get those chains off again.
Mhm.
That's why I
Well, the
laugh.
best thing we can do, the best thing we can do is do what we do and be an example for other people because you really can't change other people or compel them to do anything because as soon as you get into that, you're doing the same thing that you and I would be complaining about otherwise. So all you can do is be the example.
Yeah.
I'm not saying to give up trying to train people or, give up talking to them, but, as you get older, you realize that, the best way to do this is be the example.
Be the example, and along the way you learn little tricks. You know what I mean? Um, which is, you get new knowledge, and a lot of people just want to run out and blab it to everybody. And I think people quickly find that that lands on deaf ears, or they're laughed at, or scoffed, or whatever the case may be. So eventually, you learn little things that you can do to where instead of you giving answers to somebody on something that just is out of the blue, instead you can get them to ask you questions. And if you can get somebody else to ask you questions, then now their ears are open and receptive to what you have to say. And so you can kind of drift
Mm-hmm.
people into that direction to where they're going to ask you. That way you're not going to them.
Yep.
And it's more difficult to scoff at somebody's answer when you're the one that asked them the question.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. We just got to keep at it. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a matter of time. And like I say, bottom line, and like you've brought up as well, these are things that you can't do it for somebody else. They have to do it themselves. I think in the beginning, everybody runs out and starts looking, where's that one piece of paper I can sign on the dotted line to break free? Well, guess what? It's a great idea, but it doesn't exist. Because
Yeah.
unfortunately, you've signed many dotted lines along the way.
Yep. Be different if we were talking to somebody who was 5 years old, you know.
Yeah.
Even then they're already jammed into the system today. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Even then, they're a little bit hemmed up, and without realizing it.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for your comments and the conversation. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Maybe, this is something I don't really like doing, but maybe at some point I could set up something to where I could have like an email list or something like that, and I could send out, blanket emails. You know what I mean? Send out like a group email. That might be
Mm-hmm.
something that's an option. And I think there's probably a way of doing that through text as well. Maybe I'll have to look into that. That's not a bad idea.
Okay. Well, I'd appreciate that also if you came up with something like that.
Yeah. Because I just feel like there needs to be a little bit of a different avenue going about this, because I feel like, so many people like, doing the regular 9 o'clock every Sunday night call. It's almost like, your favorite program that comes on at 7 o'clock every Thursday night. You kind of rotate your life around to make sure you've got that space open. You know what I mean? And then it
Mm-hmm.
becomes nothing but entertainment for you. And I'm really moving in a direction now where I would more rather be talking with people who are very serious about the position they found themselves in, and will be physically doing what needs to be done to make some changes. You know what I mean? Because just
Mm-hmm.
listening to things doesn't do any good. You've actually got to get out and start doing something. I think that's the reason why this country has found itself in the position that it's in, that it's just easier to go to the voting polls and vote for who you want for a representative. And then whoever gets elected or appointed or whatever, doesn't matter. Then you can just sit back and let them take care of everything. I think that's been a great detriment to this country.
Well, there's other calls, like if you take the people who call themselves the Unity Call, they have some additional calls. The Republic, they do a lot of different things with health and trying to reestablish the Republic and grand juries, etc. But perhaps they're trying to do too many things at one time, and also dealing with status and who you are. But they've come to the conclusion that on one of their calls that they have spent a lot of time with a couple of, particularly one very knowledgeable fellow who really, has spent a lot of time studying the history of this country, digging up books that are long taken away from the public, that nobody could find them, etc. I think he was one of the original Montana freemen, if I understand correctly. But they've recently come to the conclusion within the last couple of months that they really have a phone call that people just come to or were coming to every week, and they were just basically entertaining them. But to try and get these people to do anything, it was like, I don't know, and when they had open time on the call or they were waiting for somebody, they talked about things that weren't even related to the material at hand or the topic at hand. They were talking about other things. So they said, we're spending a lot of time here, and where are we going with all of this? And yet they had a call to try and put this all back together, and they got very few, I commented and a couple other people commented, but, they got very few people even come forth and say anything about how they wanted the call to be run in a constructive manner and how they would participate. So eventually you say, who am I talking to? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
other people that have come to this conclusion, So
Yeah.
maybe it has to be done. Maybe it has to be done in the form of classes, study classes. I mean, some people I talk to say they ended up getting the most out of when they joined a study class, and they got an assignment to do a certain thing, and they researched that. Somebody else researched something else, and then they kind of put the whole program together. That was the most fruitful thing, rather than just open calls where people talked and well, I think you should do this, I think you should do that, because people just leave with all this information and say, well, what do I do with it?
Yeah. And like you said, when the people participating don't even have their mind wrap you know, in the category of what's being talked about at the time, you know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it's like call I had with Walter Burian is the one that did the CAFR one and
Mm-hmm.
exposed the CAFR accounts. When I talked to him, I probably spoke with him 2 or 3 times for an hour or two each time prior to him even coming on. And he said, he had kind of quit doing interviews and doing YouTubes and that kind of stuff anymore. He said he was just tired of people wanting to be entertained. He was tired of being an entertainer, he said, because he said when it comes right down to it, getting people to get out there and go to their county assembly meetings. And I'm not talking about an Anna Von Wright's assembly meeting. I'm talking about the actual county commissioners go to the meeting and demand to see those other accounts. That people just weren't doing it. They just wanted to listen in and be entertained. And at the same time, then people also will complain because there's these people that will charge you, to sit in and listen or maybe participate. And they're like, "Oh, the information should be free." No, you're not looking for free information. You're looking for free entertainment. And the majority of those people out there doing that, yeah, they're doing it just to make money. It's a business for them. But though at the same time, if somebody has money invested, they've got a dog in the hunt. They're going to be paying a little closer attention to what's going on if they've got a dog in the hunt.
Mm-hmm. And the information that Walter has come up with, I brought this up several years ago in a hospital board meeting, and boy, you want to see their faces when I brought this question up in this meeting. I mean, it was like, they actually had somebody get up and come over to talk to me, and yet I would have thought by the way I asked the question, and I don't recall exactly what I did at this point in time, but the way I asked the question, I would have thought that I would have stimulated the interest of some of the other people that had the availability to ask questions that were sitting in the audience, or even some of the people that were around the conference table. And, I mean, nobody touched it. Nobody touched it. And it was because the couple of people there that understood it clearly did not want this topic talked about. And the rest of the people there must have just thought, what the heck is this guy talking about? And didn't even bother to pursue it. And I was hoping to get some other people to say, no, wait a minute, what is he talking about? What is this all about? But, that's the state of affairs that we're in today. It's sad. It's sad.
Well, you know what, and you hit it, Ken. You hit the nail right on the head there, because I know a gentleman down here in South Florida that is not only uninvited to some of these board meetings, but he's actually banned from them because he comes in and he's got the paperwork and shows people, what's happening, and they've actually banned him. And here's the issue, though. The problem is, like with you, you were one voice, and this other gentleman I'm referring to, he was one voice. But what if 15 or 20 people showed up? Then what?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now instead
Well,
of
I
it just
actually
being
worked
one
on.
crazy person, now it's a group.
Well, I actually worked on, over the course of 3.5 years, I actually worked on trying to get other people to go to those meetings and ask the right questions. But, it was a major uphill battle. And, you find that you're ending up spending your time not doing what you went there for, to make constructive changes and upgrades in the system. You're fighting the administration. You're fighting the rest of the people that are on the board that are now made somehow by the other people on the board to feel uncomfortable because they might be aligning themselves with you. And when you're all done, you can come to the conclusion very easily that you're wasting 75 to 80% of your time on administrative nonsense, just trying to keep your head above water, let alone make any changes. It becomes, and then, you have the administration attacking you with me. They tried to get me off the board under some, phony baloney things. I actually had to take them to a hearing at the corporate headquarters to get them to stop that type of action and get them put in their place. And they told me in 35 years, nobody had ever, taken the CEO of the hospital to a hearing over this kind of thing. So, there's so few people doing this, and it's so unusual that people complain, they cry, moan, everything else about the conditions. But, when somebody's standing there saying, well, okay, why don't you stand up and say something? You got somebody else here that'll get your back. They refuse to stand up, even when they themselves are mishandled. That's what we deal with. So I get back to the same thing. You can only do what you can do. You do the best you can.
Yeah. And like you said, you end up spending most of your time almost fighting internally with the people that you're trying to get rallied on the issue. You know what I mean? And but people are just too content. They're too content with their bondage that they're in. And the problem, and I see this like with the group, okay, with tactical sovereignty, okay. I know you're not on Facebook and stuff, but I see this within the group where, like with the old group, somebody that had been there for 3 or 4 years, all of a sudden now they get a parking ticket and they're sending me a message going, what do I do about this? And I'm like, you've been in the group for like 3 or 4 years. Not only should you not be asking me that question, you should be out there teaching other people on how to take care of these issues. You know what I mean? But no, they were just there for entertainment.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what you're dealing with today. They got so upset with me that they actually installed a lawyer on the board as a member of the board so they could keep track of what I was doing and watch me. They became so concerned about, legal moves that I might make, et cetera, et cetera. I got a couple people to put in affidavits about some shenanigans that were going on and some things that were fraudulent, et cetera. And, so they hired outside people to come in and train all the board members on how to operate. And of course they tried to, tell you that, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, and the outright stuff that not only violated the law, it violated Robert's Rules of Order. It was so outlandish and outrageous. But that's the extent they'll go to try and stop you from asking questions and exposing things. So,
yeah, that's right.
That doesn't really deter me. I just keep moving along. So,
yeah, they say just keep doing what you know how to do, and it'd be nice if a few other people joined up along the way. But like I said, the woman sending me a message about a parking ticket, it seems like American people, and I don't mean to limit this to American people. People in general don't rise up against anything until they have their foot in the bear trap.
Yep. And then they want you to get their foot out.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's what it takes before people join together and will uprise. Is it takes the hammer to come down hard before anybody will do anything.
Yep.
All right, brother. Well,
listen,
I'm going to take off here.
Everything we do in life is another experience for us. Hopefully it teaches us something and it allows us to go on doing what we do and perhaps do it a little better. So that's the way I view it, that it's not a waste of time. It's something that just has to be done.
I agree with you 100%. You nailed it dead on right there. If you can't look back and learn from something, no matter whether it was something good or something bad, if you're not able to look back and glean something from it or learn something from it, you have an issue.
Yep. Okay, thanks, Brian.
All right, brother. Talk to you later. And anybody else that's here, you have a wonderful week, and talk to you again soon.